hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council Finance Committee for Monday, October 19th, 2020, 7 p.m. to order. Good evening, everyone. I would just like to remind everybody that all City Council meetings are held in accordance with COVID-19 state guidelines. Madam Clerk, item number 1.
Of Kenol, Helas, 13 Enterprise Street, number 1, Brockton, Mass. 02301, as a constable in the city of Brockton for a term of 3 years. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Kenol, Helas.
Good evening, sir. Would you like to come up to the podium? Do you have anything to say to the councilors or a statement?
Well, I just want to say that glad to be here and to be part of this meeting, and also to be committed to be a constable, to represent and help and serve my community, and I'm proud of it. That's all I have to say to add.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Any questions for Mr. Ellis, councilors?
Motion to recommend favorably. Second.
A motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries favorably back to the full City Council. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Madam Clerk, number 2.
Of William Wells of 116 Richmond Street, Brockton, Mass. 02301, to the Diversity Commission for a 3-year term ending September 2023 in place of Jacob Tagger of 122 Intervale Street, Brockton, Mass. 02302. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, William Wells.
Good evening, Mr. Wells. If you'd like to come up to the podium. Do you have a statement for the councilors?
I want to be I'm thankful for the invitation. I'm really hoping to make a difference on this committee, make ourselves visual in the city, make an impact in the city. I think it's going to be important to continue to build on relationships between not just us, but the community in itself and every committee in this city in order for our city to continue to be successful and make the relationships that are necessary in order for us to get the work done in this city. So I'm just really grateful to be here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Councilor Cardoso, followed by Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is the mayor not here today?
No, he did inform me that he's not able to be here this evening.
Oh, my question was with regards to reactivating the Diversity Commission. I was going to ask him if that's been activated. So are you aware, Mr. Wells, that there are other members that were in the previous administration that have not been called back to the committee here?
No, I'm not. I was not aware that the other members haven't been called.
Okay, because there were other members that I've talked to that have. That was going to be my question. Has he reactivated it? And as far as the other members, there was Janet Trask and Tony Branch, Adriana Cabral, a bunch of them that I've talked to that haven't been called back. So I'm not sure if you know that there were members from the previous administration, but I welcome you. I just, just curious as to, did he give you a date when you would start, or? No?
He didn't give me a date. He just said whenever it started, I would get notice from the city. So that's why I'm here tonight as well, to fill in for Jacob since he left.
Okay, I'll reach out to him, but thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nicastro.
Mr. Wells, I just wanted to say it's good to see a new face. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Power.
Yes, just as a point of information, and to this gentleman, the Diversity Commission is formed by an ordinance here in the city. Those people who are appointed remain active until their successor is appointed and qualified. So the Diversity Commission has not been deactivated. It can be called to order by the chair. It can act on matters of importance before them, and there may be different people appointed. If terms have expired from one person, there could be other people appointed, but just for the record, it's still very much active depending upon whether the chair wants to call a meeting or not. Okay. And that's true of all boards and commissions. You're active until your successor is appointed and confirmed. So, gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor, and that is true. I mean, that applies to all the boards and commissions. I believe they're all there are carryovers from boards, so that could be an answer. But I would, to Councilor Cardoso's question, I would definitely ask the mayor's office to maybe reach out to the chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Motion to recommend favorably.
Second.
A motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend favorably back to the full city council. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries favorably. Have a good evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, number 3.
Of Emiliano, LeGrand, Chery, of 98 Southfield Drive, Brockton, Mass. 02301, as a constable in the city of Brockton for a term of 3 years. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Emiliano, LeGrand, Chery.
Good evening, Mr. Chery.
Good evening. My name is Emiliano. I'm from 80, so I'm happy to be here today or tonight. So I'm a criminal justice major. I want to be constable to bring my participation and to serve the city of Brockton. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, councilors?
Motion to recommend favorably?
Second.
Second.
A motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries favorably back to the full city council. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, number 4.
Ordered that the sum of $2 million is appropriated to pay costs of replacing water transmission, main piping, and valves, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 8, 5, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore. All or any portion of this borrowing may be obtained through the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, the trust. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any such premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this order in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such cost by a like amount. Further ordered, that the city treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify under Mass General Law, Chapter 44A, and any and all bonds or notes of the city authorized by this vote, and to provide such information and execute such documents as the Municipal Finance Oversight Board of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts may require. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Martin Brophy, Treasurer, Lawrence Rowley, Commissioner of DPW.
Thank you. Councilors, the mayor and Mr. Clarkson both informed me that they would not be here this evening, but we do have, for this item, our Treasurer, Marty Brophy, and our DPW Commissioner, Larry Rowley, here to answer any questions, as well as filling in for Mr. Clarkson this evening is our Budget Director, Karen Praval, and our Financial Analyst, Mr. Palomano. So they're both here to answer, all 4 of them are here to answer questions on these items, if you have any questions. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This would be a question for you, Larry, if you had a moment.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening, Mr. Rowley. So is this the phase 2 of the the gate valve replacements for the transmission lines from the water plant?
Yes.
Is that what this is?
Yes, this is a continuation from Phase 1. Phase 1 went from Silver Lake to Route 18, Peaceful Meadows, and now we're going from Peaceful Meadows right into Brockton.
And how many gate valves require replacement?
I believe there's going to be, hold on, I think there's 13. Yes, 13. There's 13. There's 6 in Whitman, 2 in East Bridgewater, and 5 in Brockton.
And do we have any idea of, let's say, a goal of what to do with the $2 million in the capital fund that we are not going to have to spend because we're borrowing this money now?
Yes, believe it or not, I already have most of that spent. I do have on my agenda, but I gotta talk to the mayor. I've talked to him a little bit about it, but I have Thomas Street and Thomas Circle. and also I have Morse Avenue. Morse Avenue is bad. And then I'm gonna see how much money I have left over, and there could be another street in between. I don't know which one, and I don't know how much money I'm gonna have left over.
And that would be for full water main replacements and the
Full water
paving
main
after that?
replacement and reconstruction of the roads.
Well, I definitely concur with Thomas Street and Thomas Circle, and our east side of Brockton does appreciate attention to that matter. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, Counselor. Counselor Fowler. Counselor Fowler.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening, Counselor.
I'm pardon me, trying to read between the lines of what Mr. Clarkson sent us and what's happening here, because it could be that I'm confused, but I want to find out exactly whether I'm confused or whether we have an issue here. If I'm correct with Mr. Clarkson's email, the City Council appropriated $2 million to do exactly what you just described we're going to do with the gate valves?
Correct.
Okay. But now it's, and forgive me, I'm not being flip, it's, oops, wait a minute, we can borrow $2 million in a cost-effective way, but we'll hang on to the original $2 million and we'll spend it somewhere else. Isn't that what's happening?
What happened, Council, is when the budgets were developed, we go on an intended use plan with the state, and they'll award the money. At the time of the budget hearings, we weren't awarded that on the SRF loan yet. So with the total forgiveness and the 1.5%, Mr. Clarkson thought it would be better to borrow the money to do that, and then the money in my budget, I could do something else with.
Well,
I think that's what his thinking was. His people are here. They can explain it to you.
I have no problem with doing the work, but I have a problem with the fact that we appropriated money for a specific purpose. If you're not going to spend that money, then that money should go back to the city, and it should be appropriated either again for the different purposes that you think are important, or it should stay in the unexpended receipts, because we don't know what FY22 budget will be like. It might be a cushion for whatever is coming down the road. But I don't want to see the city in a position where the council approves an appropriation for a specific purpose, then we find another way to fund that, either through a grant or some other means, and we don't return the original appropriation back. I mean, that's just bad accounting. That's
Counselor, so we have Karen and Paul here. Would you like to answer Counselor Farwell's question?
I hadn't finished yet.
Oh, sure,
so-
but that's what they're here for. So to be able to answer, if you had a question on Troy's email, they'll be able to answer that for you. I think the commissioner was
with all due respect, Madam Chair, I'm not going to ask Karen Preble to comment on an email sent by someone else. I'm just telling the commissioner.
She's here to represent Mr. Clarkson because he's not here this.
I understand why she's here. Thank you very much. My point is, I do not believe that we should have a $2 million appropriation, which for whatever reason you haven't spent, and now you want to retain that for some other purpose. I think that should go back to the city. That's my point, and at that point, I'll allow other councilors to comment.
Counselor Lally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, my thought on this matter is, you know, really to take advantage of the opportunity. In your interaction with Councilor Thompson, you know, you guys talked about the state of the infrastructure on the east side of the city. And if you're sitting on a couple extra bucks, I'd be happy to run down a couple of roads for you. You know, if the council and the mayor would like, you know, to discuss moving that money, you know, officially having it as a form of a resolve or an order to move the money, and the council decide, you know, whether or not to take that money back out of the DPW, I would have no problem with that. I would, however, right now vote to keep it within the DPW because I'm sure they can find a use for it. I know myself and many of the other councilors have joined the commissioner to take tours of some of the facilities that the DPW owns and maintains, and seeing what they do. And we do need a lot of work across the city, especially on the east side. I would if it's possible, like to hear from Karen and Paul, just regarding the email, just for the folks at home. But just to flesh that out, but I do think it's a good catch on Councilor Farwell's end to see, what money's going where.
So with Karen or Paul, I know Paul's been working on this, so whoever wants to present, that's fine.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. In response to you, Councilor Farwell, it's right. We did appropriate $2 million into the enterprise fund for valves, which is under the capital section of the budget, with the opportunity to receive this loan at 1% interest, looking at a payment of $116, approximately between principal and interest for the year. We do have a savings in that fund. For all of our enterprise funds, if we don't spend the entire amount that's been appropriated at the end of the year, it does roll into retained earnings, which then becomes part of the next year's fiscal budget, which then is entitled to the council to vote on what we end up spending the money for the next fiscal year. So I just wanted to clarify, in terms of the funds, once it's been appropriated, how that would come back, but that would go back as retained earnings if it's not spent during the fiscal year.
Thank you, Karen. Paul, did you want to comment on this, or you all set?
No,
No, you're good? Okay, does that all set, Councilor Lally?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Cruz?
Thank you. I believe you somewhat answered what I wanted also, but I mean, the opportunity, this is found money, this is a great opportunity for us, but that other $2 million, we will have to reappropriate. I don't see how legally it can be used without it coming in front of us. We've appropriated money for a specific project. We're now not going to use it for that, so we're going to have to reappropriate that. Do you disagree with me?
I do. This money was appropriated within a capital line item. The line item, the object code, the statutory category in terms of which this was appropriated was under capital. So with this being a capital project, money can be spent from that $2 million. You would just have a balance remaining. And I think, as we look at projects, we look at, what are the city's needs in terms of their capital infrastructure, especially in the water department. And it being an enterprise, as I was mentioned before, anything unspent based on the decisions of the department head would then roll back into retained earnings, which would then be used for the following fiscal year, 22, in terms of being able to fund that budget, at which point we'd come to the council to discuss the line items within the FY22 budget.
So this specifically is what I asked Mr. Clarkson 2 weeks ago, or whenever we changed the process for putting that money into a capital account. We reappropriated many line items just 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, wasn't it, into a capital account. You're telling me now that we are only appropriating it as capital money and that we no longer have the right to say where it's spent?
No, the money that was appropriated in FY21 is in capital outlay, which can be used towards a capital project. The money that was moved in the previous council meeting was for FY20 funds, and then we closed out FY19 original appropriations.
Okay, so, but still, what you're saying is we are no longer approving specific projects. We are approving just a capital line item, and the department head can use it any way they want.
So when the budget is appropriated, the appropriation is based on the statutory category, which is either personal services, overtime, goods and supplies, purchase, and capital outlay. That's based off of how the appropriation works.
I'm going to have to meet with Mrs. Clarkson on that, but that's not how it's been. So we no longer have appropriation powers, is what you're saying to me?
No, you do have appropriation powers, absolutely.
So that's not what you're saying to me right now. You're saying we don't appropriate, we just appropriate the money to capital funds.
The money was appropriated into the category of, the statutory category of capital funds, which includes several different object codes. If you turn to page 368 in your budget document, you'll see where that line item is.
In the entire, you're
in
talking about
budget document on page 368, you'll see where that is appropriated, which was based on your approval.
I don't have the budget with me right now, so we, okay, I mean, again, this is a project I want to see, I want more staff done, and we need this done, but I'm very concerned about the changes in our appropriating powers, and that's absolutely what we're being told right now, is that we no longer have the power to appropriate that money to certain projects, that even if we appropriate it, the department head can change. If it's a capital project, can change. And again, Mr. Rowley is one I have to question. I'm thinking of this in a broader picture now.
No, as we look at the projects, I mean, we appropriate the projects within the statutory category for capital-specific projects. Within this case, it's within a category that can be used for different projects that are capital-related, not in terms of the 5-year capital project.
So in other words, when you come to us from now on, all we'll say is capital projects. It won't mention, we won't be talking about specific projects at all.
No, when we present our 6-year capital plan, it does have a list of all the different projects that a department is interested in.
That's a wish list, but when it comes to us in the past, we appropriated for specific projects.
Yes, and you still do appropriate for specific projects. This project that was appropriated was a $2 million project for valves. And now that the valves that are going to be done within the water main, we are able to reduce that amount that we're spending for the year by getting the loan. Instead of paying $2 million worth of valves with the SRF loan, it allows us to make a payment of $116. So there is a balance left. So that, I mean, can be further conversation on what the city intends to do with the amount remaining in that appropriation, you know, with the decisions based off the department head if they want to talk about more about what they want to spend that on. But it's definitely a conversation we're willing to have to go over, but I'm not stating that you don't have the authority to vote on projects, because that's what you do as a legislative body, is vote on the different projects.
It sure sounds to me like that authority's been taken away from us. We'll have to have more information from Mr. Clarkson on this, because again, this is a project we need to get done. I'm happy to have it move forward, but this is totally taking away the authority of the appropriating board, which is us. We appropriate by project, and in this case, we're not anymore. This accounting theory, this accounting process is taking away the city council's appropriating authority, in my opinion. So, thank you, thank you.
All
We'll have
set,
to have more-
Councilor Nacastro.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I have no problem with the finance department getting a better deal and being able to borrow the money and actually having to pay back less than what they borrow. I read all the terms. I have no problem with that. But since we did appropriate the money, and I did copy the water budget that we approved at the end of June, and I have it, I have the line item here. Since we did appropriate the $2 million, $2 million is a lot of money. I'm concerned about setting the precedent of just sliding that money onto another line for this department. It's not that they can't use it, of course they can, but we might have a more pressing need. And so I really want the mayor to weigh in on this, and I would like to talk to Mr. Clarkson again. I'm not sure I go along with this, or want to at this time. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Council, any councilors that haven't asked any questions before we do a second round? Nope. Councilor Farwell.
You know, I'm sorry you got put in the firing line tonight, but I want you to think about what you're saying. Basically, what you're saying is that when people come into this council during budget times and they say, we need $2 million to do A, B, C, D, and E, that later on, if you find a different way to fund A, B, C, D, and E, oh, well, we're going to keep the money, the $2 million that you appropriated for that purpose, and use it somewhere else. And forgetting whether maybe that's legal, and maybe that's the way Mr. Clarkson wants to run the finance office, and maybe that's the way he thinks the city ought to operate, I don't agree with that. And I'm going to move to postpone this until our next Finance Committee meeting to allow other appropriate people like the mayor and Mr. Clarkson to be here.
Second. On the motion,
Councilor Cruz.
could I ask Mr. Brophy a question?
Any objections? Mr. Brophy is an invited guest on this item. Any objections?
Who is?
Seeing none? Oh, he is? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Evening, Councilor.
Good evening. Would a 2-week, is this borrowing time sensitive?
If it's an SRF loan, no. Because basically, when you go through the trust, you basically get an interim loan on this. There's no, we don't borrow the money completely. You get an interim loan, you expend the money within, if the project is 50% completed, they try and permanently borrow a certain amount to trust after at least a year. Then it's, again, you can expend and pay. So this isn't one where we go out to market, borrow the $2 million, and spend it. This is a reimbursable loan.
So a 2-week holdup shouldn't affect the, and the state fund that this comes out of isn't going to look at that?
No, in fact, if you pass this, I start basically getting all the legal documentation approved by bond counsel, and then it goes to the trust, who would then do a loan commitment, and then we could do an interim loan. So this isn't time sensitive.
No, on your end, it's not. Could I ask Mr. Rowley a question on the motion?
Commissioner Rowley. Thank you, Mr. Brophy.
I think you know we want the work done, and again, this is more about process with Mr. Clarkson and the finance. If we put this off 2 weeks, it's not going to affect where you are and what you're doing, is it?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Counselor. A motion's been made and properly seconded to postpone this to the next finance meeting. All those in favor of postponing? All those opposed? The motion carries. This will be postponed until the next finance meeting. Madam Clerk, number 5.
Ordered, appropriation of $150,000 from taxation and estimated receipts, $120,000, and unappropriate estimated receipts, $30,000, to Parks Department, other contract services. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Timothy Carpenter, Superintendent of Parks.
Good evening, Mr. Carpenter.
Good evening, councilors. Any questions? I mean, this really is due to the unanticipated tremendous success that we've had so far this year at the golf course. I did spend a spreadsheet along earlier today, just a quick rundown of some numbers. Currently for the season, as of about 9 o'clock this morning, we were at $1.311 million. That puts us over $200,000 ahead of where we were for the entire season last year, and about $280,000 ahead of where we were at this point last season. Because of that unmitigated success, we do have a shortfall in our line item that we use to pay the contracted services for the operation of the pro shop. That's what brings me here this evening.
Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. I think some people have had some questions, but I have to tell you that COVID has been a terrible thing for every business out there, except for the golf business. It's been a boon to golf. I was talking to some of the private courses at a meeting with a consultant to private golf courses recently, and the records are being set everywhere. But I have to tell you that I had a chance to play DW Field about a month ago, and it is in the kind of condition that most private golf courses are, and we are off the charts. And I guess for those at home that hear we're short in the line item, that's just to pay the pro that runs the course, and these dollars are well within what is paid to private golf course and public golf course pros in the area. I have to tell you, it's that just for the public, let them know that 1.311 million goes into the general fund. Is that correct? Or?
So the golf course operates, the Parks Department and the golf course operates as an enterprise fund?
Enterprise fund.
Yes. So that money goes to offset the requirement from the general fund for the overall operational budget of the Parks Department.
And so just so the public knows, the golf course pays for much of what happens in our parks.
So in theory, if the golf course brought in $2.1 million in a fiscal year, in theory, the city would not have to supplement the budget if my budget were still $2.1 million.
Right. So thank you. I just want to say again, your people up there are doing an unbelievable job. It was a great day, and I played with 3 people who were members at a private course, Marshfield Country Club, and they were unbelievably impressed. And it's a great advertisement for the city of Brockton right now. So
absolutely,
thank you.
Thank you,
Point of information,
Councilor
Madam?
Monahan.
Yes, just, and I did talk to Tim, that after, Tim did play there, the course was not quite in as good a shape as it was before he did get there.
It
I'll
had
make sure
three
that
extra
was
golf balls, so I
noted.
noticed. Motion to recommend favorably.
We have a couple of councilors that have questions. Councilor Farwell.
Good evening, Mr. Carpenter. I'm trying to understand, I looked at the contract, and by the way, I understand that it ends December 31st, 2020. It is a lucrative contract. You said that there are 3 components to how we pay this gentleman. One is the number of rounds played, the other is rental of golf carts, and the third is the running of the pro shop. Is that?
So he is given a percentage of overall sales.
Right.
Right, for everything besides merchandise. The merchandise is not part of the contract.
Okay, in fiscal year 2021, according to our budget book, page 353, line item 531700, we appropriated $182,500. You are now asking for another $150. Does that mean that this gentleman is going to make close to $300,000?
There is the outside possibility, but I think it's an outside possibility, sir.
What is his average compensation? This isn't his first year contract. What does he usually bring in prior years?
It is much closer to that originally appropriated sum, sir.
182?
Yes.
Okay, but this 150 is in addition to the 182.5, so
Yes, sir.
You're basically saying that we need $330,000 set aside for this gentleman?
This would get us through the remaining of this fiscal year.
I think Councilor Cruz ought to leave the council and play golf up there and run the place. I mean, I'm not being funny, but that's, you know, for the average person in Brockton, that they're wondering, wait a minute, you know, this seems exorbitant. Why not
Again,
hire someone on a salary and have them?
So I will let you know that the gentleman that operates Performance Golf Management, that operates the pro shop for us, has recently, so he will be, this is the end of his second year. It was a 2-year contract with a 1-year option to extend. The Parks Department, the Parks Commission did pick up his 1-year option to extend. So he will be back next season. And I think you're absolutely right. We may be at the point as a golf course operation to be able to hire someone as a city employee to operate that pro shop for us. We weren't at that point, to be quite honest with you, sir, for the past 8 years. We
Well,
really weren't.
I'm sorry.
We may be at that point. And it's going to take some pretty serious investigation on my part to see exactly how that functions. So, you know, the 3rd-year option being picked up by the Park Commission sort of gives us that time to establish, okay, what would the salary for this position be? How would we handle merchandise? Would the city be responsible for purchasing the merchandise, or would the vendor? And does the city get a clip of that? So, you know, we do have some time, but you're right. We may be at the point where it is more cost-effective to have an employee of the city operate that pro shop.
Well, I'm sorry the contract was picked up apparently prior to October 19th, when it didn't end until December 31st, because in fiscal year 2020, $236,000 was appropriated for golf cart RE. Is that refurbishing or golf cart equipment, or? Line item 589028, again, page 353. This is fiscal year 20 now. Last year, we spent $236,000. This year, in fiscal year 2021, golf cart supplies, line item 558401, again, page 353, $14,000. It appears to me that we're repairing the golf carts. I don't know whether we're purchasing them, and he's getting paid simply to rent them? Is that the way it works?
That's essentially how, I mean,
So we own
yes,
the golf carts.
Absolutely, we own the golf carts.
And we repair them?
And we repair them.
We put the natural gas in them to fuel them?
We fuel them.
And he reaps the benefits of simply filling out the paperwork to rent
Well,
them to?
he's responsible for refueling the cars, he's responsible for cleaning the cars when they come back, he's responsible for securing the cars at the end of the night. This year, he's also responsible for sanitizing the cars.
I understand. I would just say to my colleagues, I wish, this is the type of issue when somebody's going to make close to $300,000, that's the type of issue that I think we could have collaborated on with the chief financial officer, maybe the mayor and the chairman of the park commission, because I got to tell you, I think, given what people are facing now, I think it's obscene. That's an obscene amount of money for however exemplary the golf course is, and it is. I don't play golf, but I hear enough good things about it, especially the head groundskeeper up there, who I guess is absolutely #1. But I'm not happy with this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
May I address that just real quick too, sir? Just as a point of information. Now, the operator of the pro shop is also responsible for paying all of his own employees.
Right.
So it's not just him alone up there. We have strict requirements on, as part of the contract, which was forwarded to you, on a ranger program. So there needs to be a ranger there from 8 in the morning until close. So the operator of the pro shop pays for the rangers. He pays for his supplemental employees to cover the counter, to do cart maintenance, to do, in terms of fill-ups, cleanings, and washing. So I just don't want it to seem like this is one individual making this sum of money. This is someone who is the head of a company who is paying his employees from those proceeds as well.
Well, just in response, I understand he runs a management company out of Hanover. I would rather see a Brockton resident paid a lower sum of money to run that operation, make whatever modifications we have to. But you just raised an interesting issue. Who audits the books to determine the amount of sales of a rental of golf carts and the sales of items in the pro shop, and also, I assume, the rounds of golf? Who actually monitors that on a daily, a monthly, a weekly basis?
So all those are our point of sale system, our POS system.
Yeah.
Produces a daily report, which comes back to my office, and we review that daily report on a daily basis.
And that includes the golf carts?
Correct, sir.
And you audit that, you audit those?
We review the numbers to make sure that, what is being provided to us in terms of credit card receipts and in terms of cash reflects exactly what the POS system says we should have.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councilor Castro.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Carpenter.
Good evening.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for responding to my emails. I was surprised that we received no backup with this order that's in front of us tonight. And fortunately, you and Mr. Clarkson responded to my requests for backup so I could understand what the $150,000 was for. Maybe in the future, give us a little more, so we have more of a complete picture.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry I'm not a golfer. I'd love that job to make that pay. That's really swell. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All set, councilors? Councilor Cruz.
Thank you, and I'm glad that Mr. Carpenter straightened that out. I didn't realize that some people thought this was one person making $300,000. This is a business that has probably 7 or 8 full and part-time employees that are being paid out of this. And the golf course couldn't run without those employees. So the idea that somebody's making $350,000 a year isn't the case. But the idea of having, we've in the past had city employees running, and it is not the same. It's a business and an industry where a name can attract certain players. People will come from out of town because they know that a particular pro is at a place, or that a particular company is running that golf course. So I think it's very important to understand. I didn't realize some people were under that misconception that this is one person making that kind of money. That's not the case. This is, again, my guess is at least 10 employees, not all full-time, but this is a business that is paying to run those. And again, in the industry, this is well within, in fact, we're getting a lot of bang for our buck right now. go. Thank you. I'll make a motion to recommend favorably.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries favorably back to the full city council. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Madam Clerk, number 6.
Ordered. Appropriation of $80,000 from Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, fiscal year 20. COPS, Office Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act, LEMHWA Program Grant. To Police Department, fiscal year 20. COPS, Office Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act, LEMHWA Program Fund. No match required. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Emmanuel Gomes, Chief of Police.
Good evening, Chief.
Madam,
Councilor Cruz?
before we even talk about this, I know that we talked about this last week, but I think it's great that we have the chief in front of us. Thank you for the job you did. And again, I know that any one of your officers would have done that, but the idea of saving that baby a couple of weeks ago, thank God you were there, where you were at the time, and thank you so much on behalf of the city. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Councilors, any questions for Chief Gomes?
I have a quick question.
Councilor Cardoso.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
How many officers will benefit from this program? And is there a priority given to certain groups, or is it open for all?
It's actually a very good question. The benefit will be for department-wide for services. It also includes our brothers and sisters at Massasoit Community College and the other city police officers, which are with the school departments. It includes everyone. We're going to have some specialized training. Right now, something that's lacking, you can understand, in the law enforcement communities, any of this peer help, these types of things with everything that's going on. And right now, so you understand, Council, we really pursue this because we have officers that, through some of these critical incidents and some mental health issues, some of these things are career-ending, and they cannot be retained. So we want to address some of those items before they become at that level. So we want to have a network of officers that have both local training and national training. And we're also going to be contracting a licensed mental health worker to assist in that and basically have them on retainer, if you will. And there'll be constant monitoring for the welfare of the officers and the other officers in this region.
Is this the first time you're getting this particular grant, or?
Yes, and actually, Councilor, this is not a grant. This is more of an agreement through the COPS program, just to ensure that, and they're seeing a need for mental health within the law enforcement community. And right now, we have virtually zero.
Right, it's so important, and I like the peer-led model. Do you plan on writing for more of these types of, or?
I would like to take this in a much more expansive mode. I think there's a need, and I'd like to include more people and other groups from the city, same way that we've included the school police and the Massasoit Community Police. We could expand this to other city departments.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Castro.
Thank you. Good evening, Chief. Thank you for being here. I did have the opportunity to speak to Michelle St. James about this today. I just wanted to throw in for the viewing audience, this is an $80,000 grant from a federal group, the Community-Oriented Policing Services, and it's to create and implement a peer support program in conjunction with the Brockton School Police and Massasoit Community Police to enhance the mental health of its officers. I think it's great that Brockton was able to get it, and I know you'll do a good job with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
All set,
Madam Chair.
Council? Any other questions, councilors? I have a quick question for you, Chief, since the school police came up. I have a couple of constituents who've asked me, what are the school police doing now with the schools being closed? Are they being dispersed throughout the city, or I didn't know what to answer my constituents.
The school police continues to be supervised on a day-to-day operations by a Brockton Police Department lieutenant. They are our brothers and sisters up there. They go through the same training. Right now, they're helping out with the drive-through,
Testing.
the testing that goes on up there. They're also assisting with the lunch distribution program. And then there's still, even though those buildings may not be occupied, you know, there's still alarms and there's buildings to be checked and things of that nature, so that continues.
Thank you, Chief.
Motion for favor recommendation.
Second.
A motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries favorably back to the full city council.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the next one's you as well, Chief. Madam Clerk, number 7.
Ordered, appropriation of $8,628 from Massachusetts Department of Public Health, Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, BSAS, fiscal year 2021, First Responders Naloxone Grant, to Police Department, fiscal year 2021, First Responders Naloxone Grant Fund, no match required. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Emmanuel Gomes, Chief of Police.
Motion for favor recommendation.
Second.
On the motion?
Counselor Cruz.
Thank you. Just a quick question, Chief. Through the COVID, are you and the fire department finding more calls for naloxone? I always say it wrong. Less, the same? Has there been any effect?
I haven't seen any effect. That the issue with the opioids, although it's not taking the lead story these days, continues to be there. And it's a subject for daily calls for us, probably even more so for the fire department.
More so for, thank you. Thank you.
Counselor? Any other questions, councilors? No. Motion was made.
And seconded.
And it was properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries favorably back to the full city council. One more, Chief. Madam Clerk, number 8.
Ordered, appropriation of $1,000 from Southern New England Brotherhood Ride Incorporated to Police Department, no match required. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Emmanuel Gomes, Chief of Police.
Move to recommend favorably.
Second.
A motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries favorably back to the full city council. Thank you, Chief.
Council, thank you. Thank you again.
Good night, Chief.
Number 9.
Ordered, appropriation of $4,700,000 from Department of Housing and Urban Development Lead Hazard Reduction Grant to Mayor's Office, Lead Hazard Reduction Grant Fund. There is a required match of $400,000 that will be used from the CDBG funding. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Robert Jenkins, Brockton Redevelopment Authority.
Good evening, Mr. Jenkins.
Good evening, councilors.
Any questions for Mr. Jenkins, councilors?
Motion to recommend
Counselor Cruz has a question.
Have we had this grant before?
Yes, this is our second time being funded.
And was it this big before too, or?
No, actually, it was smaller. It was almost 3 years ago, March, that we came before the council with the first award of $3.4 million. This year, we got $4.7 million.
And we'll use all of that?
We are actually 2/3 of the way through that first grant. Our total units was 143. We're at 93, I believe, as of today. Even under COVID, we continue to do lead mitigation with protocols, of course.
Thank you. Thank you,
Counselor
Madam
Cardoso.
Good evening.
Good
Mr.
evening.
Jenkins. So is there an educational component here? I saw that you're using the Cape Verdean Association as a grassroots organization. Is that?
Sure. That's going to be an emphasis for this particular grant. Previous grant, we didn't focus so much on education. We just really wanted to get the units done.
Mm-hmm.
It had been, prior to that, I think it was 5 years that the city had gone without a lead mitigation grant of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
So this year, that will be an emphasis on education. As you know, lead laws change almost like every 5 years. The standards get higher. For a city like Brockton, it affects our kids, their learning ability. It's really bad if you really take a deeper dive into it. So yes, education will be a...
Really, that's good. I was excited to see that. And then as far as landlords being able to pay for the de-leading process, there's some priority given to low-income landlords?
Priority is given to children under 6 under our grant. Landlords low-income folks who landlords rent to, we look for an obligation of 5 years to rent once the units are de-leaded. They do have to, investors do pay a portion as well. If they go beyond our program, we do then send them to Mass Housing Finance that has their Get the Lead Out program, which is more of a loan program. They have made exceptions for Brockton, though.
Okay, and if you don't use the funds like Councilor Cruz asked, does it carry over to
It
following?
does, but like most cities in New England, we have old housing stock. There's no reason why we
You can't use it.
use the money.
Okay,
So we get it done.
thank you very much.
Sure.
All set, Councilor Nacastro.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Jenkins.
evening.
Thanks for being here. I noticed that on this $4.7 million grant from the feds, there's a required match of $400,000, and that comes from other federal funds
Correct, our CDBG.
that we administer. Okay,
Correct.
so it doesn't come out of city budget?
No. As a matter of fact, it's like 114,000 out of our 1.3, 1.4 million. We get that done.
That's really good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
A motion was made, but I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Motion was made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries favorably back to the full city council. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, number 10.
From the mayor, in accordance with requirements set forth in 963 CMR 2.00, appointing the following members to comprise the school building committee for the Huntington School Roof Replacement Project. Aldo Petronio, CFO, Brockton Public Schools, Chair and non-voting member. Robert F. Sullivan, Mayor, non-voting member. Mark DiAgostino, Ward 3 School Committee member, voting member. Michael Thomas, Superintendent of Schools, non-voting member. James Plouffe, Interim Superintendent of Buildings, voting member. Ossie Jordan, community member with construction experience, voting member. Dennis Ianieri, Ward 3 City Councilor, voting member. John Lander, principal of the Huntington School, non-voting member. And Matt Stanton, community member, voting member. Pursuant to Section 60 of the City Charter, these appointments are submitted to the City Council for confirmation. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Michael Thomas, Superintendent of Brockton Public Schools, Aldo Petronio, Chief Financial Officer, Brockton Public Schools, and Mark DiAgostino, Ward 3 School Committee member.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
A motion was made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries favorably back to the full city council. Thank you, Mr. Petronio and our Ward 3 School Committee member for being here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilors, any moments of recognition, council's recognition? Councilor Nacastro.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to again remind everyone that Wednesday, October 21st, so that's 2 nights from tonight, from 6:30 until 7:45, there will be a neighborhood meeting to discuss the proposed multifamily housing at 223-261 Thatcher Street. It's on the grounds of the Our Lady of Sorrows Convent. The meeting is being held virtually on Zoom, and I've posted the information for getting onto the Zoom call on the city's website under events, and also it will be broadcast live on Brockton Cable Access Channel 12 and on the BCA's YouTube channel. And if anybody has any questions about that, they can contact Councilor Thompson, representing Ward 5, or me, representing Ward 4. My phone number is 508-897-1314. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? Nope. Well, I have a few reminders. First of all, Brockton voters, I would like to remind you that early voting started October 17th, and it goes on till October 30th. It's at the Westgate Mall, inside the mall, at the old Pelice shoe store location. Hours do vary. Monday through Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays are from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Wednesdays is a longer times. It goes into the evening. Wednesday is from 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, they're open from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. So everybody has the opportunity to go out and vote. And the Elections Commission has installed a ballot box right at the entrance of at City Hall, at the handicap entrance, so residents can drop off their absentee ballots into the box. On another note, I would just like to remind everybody at home that to always check out the Brockton City website, which is brockton.ma.us. We have, Brockton is constantly hiring. We have a lot of employment opportunities go on, and it's available to residents. We do have a residency law, but go on and check out what's being posted on our city website. With no further business before us this evening, this meeting's adjourned.